we were invited to some Bhagavad Gita conference. It was sponsored by one of the disciples of Gandhiji, Vinoda Bhave, in a place called Wardha in Maharashtra. And he's very famous. Vinoda Bhave was like one of the most famous saints in the Gandhi tradition, and all big political leaders would go to meet him. And he was trying to protect the cows from being slaughtered. That was like one of his last campaigns. But somehow he was having a big conference on the Bhagavad Gita, and he invited Prabhupada to come. And he invited many other sadhus to come. So I was there for that conference. And they were all sitting in a very raised seat, and Vinoda Bhave had many women disciples who would chant whole chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. And then Prabhupada, he had international devotees, men and women. And there were other Mayavadis who had their disciples. So Prabhupada, Vinoda Bhave had his disciples sing the Bhagavad Gita, and he spoke something. Then Prabhupada had us chant Hare Krishna. We were all chanting a big kirtan, and everybody was rocking and clapping their hands, and they were getting into the kirtan. Then Prabhupada delivered a very nice lecture. And afterwards there was one Mayavadi sannyasi, and it seemed like he was upset that Prabhupada's kirtan and everything was having a big effect on the whole crowd. So then, normally he would just give a Bhagavad Gita class, but now he wanted to do a kirtan also. So then he told the people, you should all chant with me, we'll do a kirtan. And it seemed like he was just speculating some mantra right on the spot. Maybe he chanted before, I don't know. But it was a very unusual mantra, something like Satchitananda Vasudeva Satchit Ananda Govindam, some Om Tat Sat. And then, it was just like really strange, and nobody was really getting inspired by the mantra, but he was trying to chant it. In the middle of Prabhupada, he just said to the devotees, chant Hare Krishna again. So that right in the middle of his, Mayavadi kirtan, the devotees just jumped up and with kirtan, kartals and madranga drums, they just started chanting, and everybody was kind of relieved because that was the most strange chant they'd ever heard before, in their life. So then they all started chanting with Prabhupada.
And there was a Caltech professor who introduced himself as a professor from Caltech, and who had studied Vedanta and appreciated that Prabhupada had given a simplistic presentation appropriate for the neophytes in the West. But the further one went into Vedanta, one could understand how form becomes formless, and the whole thing they give. And he, quoted a little bit. He knew a little Sanskrit, knew a little this and that. And Prabhupada sat. Prabhupada didn't even look at him. He was standing. There was a rug there, and everyone was sitting on the rug, big rug, and this man was standing. Prabhupada didn't even look at him. Prabhupada was just looking at the deity Radha Krishna and chanting. He was Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And the man went on. Prabhupada didn't even look. You could see Prabhupada's noble profile, like a lion. You could just see he was like a lion. He was Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. And the man finally ran out of steam, Prabhupada said, are you finished yet? And the man said something, Prabhupada, there was like an intimation. The man could see that, maybe he'd gotten into something. Prabhupada turned and Prabhupada said, in this Purana, and in this Veda, and in the Vedanta Sutra, and this Upanishad, and this Samhita. And he was just like hammering a nail into the ground. The man just, it was like body blows. And then finally the man was he was stooped a little bit, and then he was like on his knees, and then finally he was like, if he could have melted into the floor, he would have melted into the floor. And Prabhupada had his hand in his bead bag, and Prabhupada was making point after point after point. And then Prabhupada finally came to a crescendo, and he finished. Prabhupada said, do you have any further question? The man said, Swami, can we have kirtan? Because that was his complaint, that we're just chanting and dancing like sentimentalists. And Prabhupada and the devotees, Jai! Prabhupada just transcendentally, the man had seen the light, so to speak.
Harsharani wrote a poem and sent it to Prabhupada. And I, of course, would open his mail and sit there and read his mail to him. And this poem was pretty bizarre. It said, I offer my humble obeisances to my spiritual master, the gist of it, who is continuously running here and there, playing hide and go seek with Krishna and the cowboys, who is always absorbed in hide and go seek and leapfrog, and describing so many cowherd, so many Leela pastimes. And Prabhupada was sitting there and he says, she has become advanced. Publish this poem in Back to Godhead. And it was printed in Back to Godhead.
I was there also when some devotees, we went with Srila Prabhupada when he was seeing Indira Gandhi, and he had a list of things he was going to discuss with Indira Gandhi. But then Indira Gandhi said that she was very upset because the president of Bangladesh, who was the founding president, Mujibur Rahman, he had just been assassinated in a coup. So she was very upset. But she made time for Prabhupada to see her, but first time she gave was a Thursday afternoon. So Prabhupada, he didn't really consult much with astrologers or anything, but he followed that don't have a really important meeting on a Thursday afternoon. Consider that it was not an auspicious time. That was about the only astrological thing he really observed. So he said, if I have to meet her at that time, then I don't want to meet her, because I'd meet her in the morning or in the evening, but not in the afternoon. So they changed the time to a time that he approved of. So then we all went together, and we got just to the door where Indira Gandhi came and met him, and then he went in alone and talked with her. So later we came back and said she was very respectful to him. And she asked him actually, well, how do you know that your followers, they're not CIA agents? And then he had to explain that, I went to the West, I preached, these people have sacrificed everything, they gave up so many bad habits, they're getting up at 4 in the morning and attending Mangal Aartis, and if they were CIA, they'd go live in 5-star hotels and they would have a whole different lifestyle. They wouldn't be vegetarians, give up all these habits. So then she was convinced, and then she said, all right, so I'll give so many of your devotees, I'll give them long-term visa. Because there was a problem then, they weren't giving us visas. So then in India after that, she passed some order, and we all got, those who needed visas, they all got visas.
So the temple president was always trying to save money, and he wanted to fry everything in peanut oil. And the devotees, we all wanted ghee and this and that. So the temple presidents used to go up, I think once a week they would go up and have lunch with Srila Prabhupada. There was some arrangement they would meet. So Durlab was his name, and he asked Srila, Laguna Beach was the temple, he asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, and we told him, we went on like a non-violent, non-cooperation strike. We said, no more peanut oil. And so he said, well, I'm going to ask Srila Prabhupada. So he asked Srila Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, can we cook in peanut oil? Prabhupada said, isn't that so first class? So later on in the conversation, the man said, Srila Prabhupada. Durlab asked, wove it in again. But what about cooking in peanut oil? Prabhupada said, peanut oil is 5th class. And finally he asked a third time, later on he said, well, Prabhupada, something about peanut oil. Prabhupada said, cook in anything you like. So the temple president heard that, oh, great, I can cook anything I like. So as he was leaving, Prabhupada said, I know one thing. Or he said, I know one man, how do you say? He said, I know one man who ate too many pakoras cooked in peanut oil. That was it. I know one man who ate too many pakoras cooked in peanut oil. And so the devotee said, oh, what happened to him? Prabhupada said, he died the next morning. So that was Prabhupada's purport on peanut oil. That more or less went out the window on that one.
One very nice thing which happened, one day we were in Mayapur, we were walking through the fields, and then Prabhupada would always have us, he'd ask me to sometime lead the way through the fields, because they're just these little narrow paths between the rice paddies. And so then he said, these are like the little highways in the fields. So then he said he wanted to go to the Ganges, and he went down to the Ganges. At that time it was in the winter, and so the river was very low, and the water had become very clear. Normally the Ganges is like a little saffron color, slightly muddy with a reddish hue. But now the flow had reduced so much that you could see the bottom. It was clear. It was very rare to see the Ganges like that. So then Prabhupada said, let's take a bath. And then the secretary said, well, Prabhupada, we don't have any gamchas or towels or anything. We just came for a walk. Then Prabhupada looked around and said, well, there's no women here. We can just go in our kopins. And then I have a top piece, I can wear this. So then he took off the top piece and put it on. And all the devotees, brahmacharis and sannyasis, just went into the Ganges.